What's up guys, welcome back to Silicon Tech. Now I know it's been a while since I spoke to you guys, but I want to come back today because Apple has released their highly anticipated new generation of MacBook Pros, and this is probably the device that I was most excited about just in terms of the transition of Apple Silicon. So 1 year ago, last year, Apple announced that they were going to start their transition to their own silicon and designing the chips for their laptops, desktops, and things of that nature, and they were going to start this 2-year transition. So that started last year when Apple put the M1 chip into the MacBook Air, 13-inch MacBook Pro, and the Mac Mini. So now we're at the point to where they're putting brand new M1 based chips into the new generation of MacBook Pros. So with the release of these MacBook Pros, Apple is releasing the tried and true 16-inch, which a lot of content creators like. They like the video editing and the photo editing and just the extra screen real estate and to be able to see everything that they need to work with. But for this year, Apple is also introducing the smaller 14-inch, which is going to replace the 13-inch MacBook Pro. So you get the extra inch of screen real estate to still be able to be more portable than the 16-inch, but also be able to get a lot of work done. Now today in this video, I want to start off with talking about the hardware changes of what this new generation of MacBook Pros is going to bring from the previous generation. So there's a lot of controversial things that Apple revisited, of things that they took away from in previous MacBook Pros and things that they added in the outgoing MacBook Pros. So we'll get into all of that over the course of the video. Now the first thing I want to talk about is the design of these new MacBook Pros. They are technically heavier and thicker and flatter than the outgoing generation. And with that being said, it's not a huge deal to me. Yes, they are big, especially when you get into the 16-inch, which is coming at a 4.7 pounds. But the more you realize what you gain in this new profile, you shouldn't be too worried about that. Now, as I mentioned, we have this new flat design, which is kind of trying to mimic the design language that's been going on when Apple released the iPad Pro in 2018. And of course, we know we got that design and more of the phones, so on the iPhone, and now it's coming to the laptops. And one thing else you may have noticed that's coming to these new MacBook Pros is the notch. Now the notches on the screen of these new MacBook Pros, and that can be very controversial when speaking with people because some feel like, why is that there? This is not an iPhone. This is the new MacBook Pro. This is a laptop. But before we get into more of why the notch is there or why it shouldn't be there, let's talk about those screens. Now these screens are some of the newer technology coming from Apple with the mini LED display, or the liquid SDR retina display as they like to call it. It was introduced earlier this year on the M1 iPad Pro, and people have been singing praises about that mini LED display. So when it comes down to it, the mini LED display is supposed to do its best to mimic, if not be better than the OLED screens. So Apple doesn't use OLED screens to this point on the iPads or their computers, but their technology is in the iPhones. Now what manufacturers are trying to get, whether you're going OLED or mini LED, is deeper blacks and brighter whites. And this does very well from an entertainment standpoint. So whether you're looking at movies, music, video, any video type media, but especially when it comes to these Pro devices, which a lot of creators will be doing work on, being able to have that mini LED liquid XDR display realistically replicating a giant OLED screen, especially if you have the 16-inch, is going to do a lot to improve people's workflow. So whether you're video editing or picture editing, being able to have colors to replicate more of a true sense of deep darks and brighter whites or brighter bright colors, that's going to make for some better overall edits. Back to the notch. Now what's in it is a new and improved camera on both versions of these machines. So whether you get the 14-inch or the 16-inch, you You're getting upgraded from the outgoing 720p camera to the 1080p camera. So you get a better overall sensor. And of course, you know, the software is going to be there to take that 1080p camera and probably make it look better than any 1080p camera on similar machines, just because Apple is going to work its software magic and be able to do more with that sensor just on the software side. But a couple of things you won't be getting with this new sensor is Face ID and the ability to have center stage. Now, most people know what Face ID is. If you have a newer iPhone, the ability to be able to unlock that iPhone with your face. So a lot of sensors has to go into the camera, and that's why you have the notch on your iPhone. But you may ask, if Face ID isn't on these new MacBook Pros, then why is the notch there? No idea. And like I said before too, center stage isn't on it, which is kind of a surprise because even the new budget iPads get center stage, and all center stage is allowing you to do is when you're on video conference calls, FaceTime, things like that. If you want to move around the room, you have the iPad back, the camera will be able to essentially follow you. The actual camera doesn't move, but what the camera is doing is just opening up a wider view of you to kind of mimic like it's following you around. So center stage isn't on these new devices, as well as the Face ID. So I really don't know why the notch is there. My guess would be a mix of, you know, the notch is really popular on the phone, so maybe Apple is using it as kind of like a trademark thing, or they're using it for room for these features to come eventually to future generations of the MacBook Pros. So we'll have to wait on that and see what it is. But in terms of the notch being a deal breaker for me, if I were to pick up any version of this MacBook Pro, I wouldn't really worry about it. Now, one of the things people are probably most excited about is Apple reviving some very important ports on these new MacBook Pros. For one, you get an SD card slot. That's very crucial for working with creatives and professionals because, hey, you're filming, you're editing videos, editing pictures, you need the SD card slot. Sure, of course, you have dongles from anywhere on all of the previous MacBooks to iPads, even phones, people use dongles. But if you're getting a professional device, you want this pretty much required port on that professional device. Apple's also brought back MagSafe, which they claim is new and improved and a stronger connection. So if somebody does trip over the MacBook Pro or kind of yank the card or anything like that, the whole laptop shouldn't just go like up in the air or in the floor, anything like that. So you should be safe, rest assured. And also going back to the whole creative professional thing, Apple's also added an HDMI port. So whether you're doing a presentation, doing some edits on a bigger monitor, you can just hook it up with that HDMI port and get work done that way too. Now on some of the, I guess, more traditional ports within the last generations of the MacBook Pro, you get an upgrade in terms of the Thunderbolt ports. So now these machines have Thunderbolt 4, 3 of those ports, as well as an updated headphone jack. So people are very excited about the ports, and rightfully so, because even with those additions, just in terms of workflows being more improved and getting better, they can definitely bring a lot more possibility with a lot less clutter and having to lug around many different dongles. And now we get to the sound. Now the MacBook Pros have always prided themselves on having better speakers than a lot of their competition. With other laptops, and this is no different, Apple has definitely improved them, not only on the 16-inch, but also showing that same love to the smaller version of the 14-inch. So in terms of overall improvements, it's a 6-speaker sound system with improved tweeters and woofers, and definitely provides richer sound, richer bass, a lot of things you would expect. But like I said, that same love is showed to the 14-inch. Now, I haven't heard them in person, but I'm pretty sure the 16-inch still has the upper hand on the 14-inch just by the overall footprint. Because of course, the larger the device, the bigger the speakers, the better the tweeters, woofers, all of those audio components you can put within that bigger chassis. But either way, whether you pick up the 14-inch or the 16-inch, you should have a very rich sounding laptop. So if you're into that type of thing, of looking at movies on your laptop, listening to music without headphones, you shouldn't be disappointed in that regard. So with this new sound system and the new display, the new MacBook Pros look like they're throwing their hat into upping the portable home theater experience you could get if you believe in that sort of thing from a laptop. But overall, you should be able to work harder and play hard on these things when it comes to getting your creative work done, and also just kicking back and watching media on them as well. And finally, I want to get to one of the most important things on a laptop when it comes to most people when they're thinking about their purchase, and that's battery life. Now, Apple has been priding itself on battery life with pretty much all of their products in the last, I would say, 5 to 7 years, and just bringing home how they get great battery life on almost all of their products. And with these devices, it's no different. In terms of the 14-inch, the best battery life you can get on a version of that is 17 hours. So I look at that as kind of like a mixed bag of you're doing working, editing, you're also viewing media, scrolling the web, just pretty much the general use of any laptop. On the 16-inch, however, you get a whopping 21 hours on this thing. Now, I know some people kind of give the 16-inch flack in terms of portability, but it's still a laptop, still meant to be portable. So whether you're lugging it around, you can rest assured at least on one version of the 16-inch, you can get 21 hours of battery life. And that's pretty great to me. I mean, you literally almost get a whole day out of it. Now, in terms of size of the batteries, on the 16-inch, you're getting a 100-watt battery, and on the 14-inch, you're getting a 70-watt battery. And depending on the charger you get, both of these batteries are capable of fast charging, and that's also a huge bonus, because even if you are kind of on the cusp of losing the battery or draining the battery, you can still fast charge it. So if you have a capable charger that supports fast charging, that's even less to worry about the battery life, knowing you can get a lot of that battery back fairly quickly. That's pretty much the big physical hardware changes when it comes to these new MacBook Pros. I'm excited for a lot of them. Like I mentioned, some people may kind of scoff at the physical design, especially the notch. But hey, what can you do? Can't get everything that you want. But what I'm most excited about is the new chipsets. So that's coming with the M1 Pro and the M1 Max. And just seeing a lot of the reviews online and hearing people's different experiences with them since they've been out for like a couple of weeks now, they seem to be the truth, and they seem to definitely be redefining people's workflows and what they think they can get out of a portable device that they can essentially lug around anywhere in the world. But we'll talk about that on the next video. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe. See you on the next one, and peace.